Assalamu alaikum. We're going to get started in about 45 minutes if you wanted to hop back on then, inshallah. Thank you so much for joining. Hey, Assalamu alaikum. Give me one. Let me relock this. Hello.
Hi, Assalamualaikum.
Wassalam. How are you?
I'm good, alhamdulillah. Sorry, it wouldn't let me talk before.
No, that's okay. No worries. I'm like still getting the hang of the whole Zoom webinar situation, so that's no problem. But I'm going to share with you right now kind of like the Learning Circle Zoom guidelines, inshallah. And really it has everything just like listed out. Let's see. Okay, I just sent it to your email.
Okay.
So really the most important part, also I'm Jinan, we haven't actually met yet. I guess
Alhamdulillah, it's nice to meet you.
you too, how are you?
Alhamdulillah, I'm doing good. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, thank you so much for helping with this last minute.
Yeah, of course.
Um,
Okay, I got it.
okay, amazing. So yeah, really the most important part is just the slides. I'll kind of cue, I mean, I'll pretty much reading off of the slides. So you'll kind of, I'm sure you'll be able to tell when to switch them. There's not too many.
Mhm.
After that last slide before let me take a look so I don't misspeak. So after the kind of statistics slide before the feedback slide, that's the last slide at the beginning of the learning circle. And then at the end of the learning circle, we pull back up the slides for that last one of the feedback.
Wait, sorry, could you repeat that?
Yeah. So do you see the slide that's like feedback?
Yeah.
So that one is like starting at before that slide. Let me rephrase what I'm saying. The slide before that with the statistics,
Mm-hmm.
that is the last slide that we go over at the beginning of the learning circle. And then at the end of the learning circle, you'll pull up the slides again. So after the Q&A, and we'll pull up the feedback form and then the resources that are on there as well. But I can cue when for you to do all of that.
Okay.
Other than that, there's like a section on this document that says links to post. So like if I ever say like, oh, resources at Medistan, like you'll send like the resources link in the chat. Or if I say like if somebody says, how can we contact you? You'll just say you may email info@medistan.org with any questions, just like copy and paste that directly to them. Let me see if I can make you. I might have to make you a panelist so that you can see the Q&A. Is that okay with you? You
Mm-hmm.
can keep your camera off. Or panelist. Okay. Okay. Let's test out the slides if you want to share your screen.
So it says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay, go ahead and try it now.
Okay. Do you see it?
I do, but it's in, so you'll want to click edit. And then you'll want to have it on present already.
Okay.
Bismillah, Bismillah, Bismillah. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Dr. Rania Arlab, and I'm the executive. So it looks frozen on my end.
Last year, in the midst of the COVID-19
Really?
pandemic, it became clear that the public health.
Maybe stop sharing your screen and then reshare.
Okay. Do you see anything?
No, so you'll have to, does it say pause share at, like it's paused at the bottom?
Yeah, it says your screen sharing is paused, but when I click resume, it's not working.
Okay, let me see. Maybe I'll have to share from my screen. Let's see. I'm gonna try and do it on my end.
Okay, let me stop.
Okay. Does that look good?
Yeah, I can see it good.
Oh, you can see it and you can hear the sound?
Is it playing right now?
No.
Okay.
Okay, let's play. Bismillah. You can hear the sound on that?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, amazing. Okay, so I can share my screen, that's no problem. If you just want to keep an eye like on the questions, like the Q&A, if there's anything that you can answer,
Okay.
that would be like super, super helpful. Or if there's any like, you know, tech, are you good on Zoom? Like, are you a Zoom person?
I've never like been a host or anything of one, but I've been a participant on a lot of them.
Okay, so if
I know how
there,
to use it, but
cool. If there's any tech situations, then I'm just gonna ask you to help me like improvise and figure that out. If anything comes up, inshallah, it does not. But we'll just run with it.
okay.
Okay. I'm going to unlock this and just because our speakers are supposed to join at 5, inshallah, so that the problem is like oh, maybe if you're a panelist, it'll let you in. Okay. Then I won't unlock it. Okay, inshallah khair. Yeah. Other than that, that is pretty much everything. Bismillah. Okay. And like you're going to grad school, right?
Yeah, inshallah, starting in August.
That's exciting, mashallah. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm excited.
Where are you going to school again?
I'm going to California State University East Bay
Oh, amazing.
for marriage and family therapy, inshallah.
That's amazing. Barakallahu fiki. That's great.
Thank you so much. Did you go to grad school?
I actually have not. I started working straight after undergrad.
That's good.
Inshallah, the plan was always to go back, but we'll see.
Have you done learning circles before?
I have done a healing circle, but this is actually my first learning circle.
Wow. Mashallah. Are you nervous?
You get to be here to witness it.
Inshallah, it'll go good. It'll go okay.
Yeah, I'm like, anything, inshallah khair. No, I think it'll be fine, inshallah. Yeah. Our speakers should be here at 5 just to test things out, like their sound
Mhm.
and audio. So hopefully they'll be here soon. And then we'll get actually started at 5:30.
Okay, that sounds good.
When you were logging in and it said it was locked, did it just say, like, what exactly did it say?
Oh, it said host has meeting locked. Like that's it.
Okay. I've been trying to figure out if there's a way to create enable the waiting room.
Oh,
But I don't think so.
I've never seen one of those before. There's like waiting rooms.
Yeah. All right. Okay, Shaykh Suhail is here, so let me unlock. Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh Suhail. How are you doing? Alhamdulillah. It's nice to meet you. My name is Jinan. I'm the one who's been emailing with you back and forth. So thank you so much for joining us.
Of course, my pleasure. Good to meet you.
Meet you too. So really right now, just we're going to test out audio. Manak and I have tested out kind of our own audio and visual aspects. So I just wanted to make sure everything was good on your end, camera, the audio aspects of your mic.
Yeah, you tell me, what do you call it? My internet is okay, but that's why I wanted to join early and just to make sure that it was solid. And everything seems okay on your end as far as my connection is.
Yeah, visually everything is great. There's nothing lagging. I think the sound is a little bit low. I think. But nothing terrible.
Sound is a little low.
Yeah. I don't know, Manak, maybe it's just on my end.
It's a little low, yeah.
How is this? Does that make a difference?
It's still a bit low.
Really, huh? Okay. How is this?
A lot better.
Yeah.
That's
Oh.
great. Alhamdulillah.
Okay. Good. Alhamdulillah.
Okay, perfect. And then you don't have any slides or anything you want to share on the screen, right?
No, I don't.
Perfect. Okay, amazing. So if everything is good, like feel free if you want to like turn off your camera, your mic for until we start at 5:30.
Good.
That's completely fine. Thank you so much for actually showing up at 5 o'clock to check in on everything.
I want to test everything out. So good stuff. Inshallah, we'll see you soon.
Okay, inshallah. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Edmund.
Walaikum salam.
How are you doing? Thank you for joining early.
That's okay. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm trying to join for last 10 minutes or so, but
Oh no. I sent you a message on WhatsApp. I don't think it delivered. And that's why I sent you a regular message.
yeah,
But
you know what's interesting is just now another one came in. I think that's probably the other one you're talking about. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah. Oh yeah, I got this already. I mean, I got an email, so
okay, amazing. Alhamdulillah. But yeah, we just wanted you to join early so we can check sound and visuals, but everything looks and sounds good. Alhamdulillah. Did you have any questions I can answer before we start?
I don't think so.
Okay,
I don't think so. Oh yeah, I guess I do have one question. I was wondering. So it's because you have a kind of like an introduction part of your outline. Are you going to kind of, or somebody else going to give like the introduction of today, and then you're going to kind of hand it off to different people throughout?
Yeah, exactly. So I have a few slides. We start off with introductory, like a 6-minute video.
Good.
And then I'll introduce both yourself and Shaykh Suhail, who's joining us today. And then I'll pass it off to you guys, inshallah. And
Okay.
I'll just kind of like guide the session until we get to Q&A. And I can kind of hand off Q&A questions to the both of you, or if you see a question that you would like to answer, feel free to do that without me even passing it off. Really kind of just like an organic session. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll open up, I have the room locked right now just because some participants were trying to join already, but at about 5:25, I'll probably start letting people in, inshallah. And then at 5:30, we will start with the introductory video, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh Suhail.
Rahmatullah. Brother Edmund. Good to meet you, man.
Good to meet you.
I had the pleasure.
So, do you live in the Bay Area? Where do you live?
No, I'm in LA.
Okay, LA. I was just there yesterday
Oh, nice. In LA or in the Bay Area?
in LA.
Okay, what are you doing up here?
I've been doing a California tour the last 3 days.
Where were you at yesterday?
So I started off in the Bay Area, San Francisco. I'm taking my son to visit some schools, and then yesterday I was in LA. I was at both USC and UCLA. My son's looking at USC, but UCLA is where one of my best friend's daughters goes to school. So she gave us a tour of UCLA as well.
Okay, nice. MashaAllah. Good. I was the chaplain there for the last many years. I just kind of left that position just now, like
Wow.
so would have too bad I wasn't able to maybe see your sons if that's the school they're going to choose. You said your son or your son?
Yeah, my son. Yeah. My son. And
I have a daughter there. I have a daughter there at UCLA.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Yeah, I would say that. I mean, I guess the MSA is pretty big there, like 700 students, something like that.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. It is probably west of the Mississippi, or something like that.
Yeah, and then now I'm in San Diego, so I'm actually visiting my brother in San Diego.
Okay, mashallah. And you're based in?
I'm based in Chicago.
You're in Chicago. Okay, fantastic. Good, man. That's where you're from, born and raised?
Yes.
Okay, nice. Good. Well, I'm glad we get to meet.
Yeah.
So you just quickly ran through LA, man.
Yeah, a little faster than I would have liked, but so I'll be here until tomorrow in San Diego visiting my siblings. I have 2 brothers in San Diego, and then I'll be flying tomorrow night to Phoenix, where my daughter is there with my grandson, alhamdulillah. So so I have a 7-month-old grandson. I'm a jaddu.
Grandson.
Yeah.
I thought I had something on you, but I ain't got nothing on you.
Yeah, so my daughter, my son-in-law live there in Phoenix. So what's interesting about San Francisco, I had no idea, is how cold. It's my first time being there, how cold it is.
Was it cold?
It's cold all the time. I didn't know this. I mean, I say cold because when we think California, we think like 75 or something. I guess it averages like 67 year round.
Well, I mean, I was just there myself. Up in the Bay on when was there last Thursday and Friday, just a few days ago, and it was actually nice there. It was warm.
Was
So
it?
yeah, I think it's just you caught maybe a little cold spell.
Maybe. But before I went, everybody started telling me, oh, it's going to be cold. And I'm like, what? It's California. It's June. What do you?
But it is cooler in the Bay for sure. You know that than LA and whatnot.
Have you ever been to Zaytuna?
I have.
Yeah. So it was my first time visiting there.
Okay.
And
Okay.
alhamdulillah, it was beautiful, mashallah. I mean, the buildings, all the buildings they bought are beautiful.
Yeah,
And
for sure. Definitely.
I was praying in the masala there, and Sheikh Hamza ends up walking by one of the buildings. So I got to say salam to him. So that was nice.
Nice.
A extra bonus.
Good. MashaAllah. Nice. It's good. Your son's considering that as well, huh?
No, he doesn't want to go to he wants to go to mid-sized school. But I've always wanted to visit Zaytuna. So
Right.
so we went, and I wanted to see what it feels like on a smaller campus, small school. Because he said that, but I wanted to just expose him to that. And since
Right.
we're right there, I wanted to visit it anyway.
Right. Nice.
I have a lot of friends in the Bay Area, actually. I got to visit a lot of different friends. It's been a busy couple of days.
Okay, MashaAllah. Good stuff. So you're full time in private practice?
No, so I work full time in a public school, and then I have a practice that I do part time that I've been doing for 20 years now, probably longer,
Okay.
with primarily the Muslim community, doing individual and marriage counseling.
Yeah.
In the Muslim community. So, in my community in Chicago, we have a very large Muslim population. Specifically over the last 10 years, it's really exploded. It's called the Mecca Center. It's in it's just southwest of Chicago, and a huge Syrian population there.
Oh.
I think with the war and everything, you've had an increase as well over the last 10 years. And then and so I'm sponsor of the MSA there, and just been working with teenagers for the last 23 years at the high school.
Oh, really? MashaAllah.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
I hate to cut this conversation
Yeah.
short, but I'm gonna open the room for the participants,
Okay.
inshallah.
I thought this was for me just to hang out with Shaykh.
Next time we'll plan a session.
Yeah. Bismillah.
Good stuff. We'll hopefully get a chance to bump into each other in person.
Yes. Inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to go ahead and get started with an introductory video, inshallah, and then we'll get started with the program and introducing our amazing guests, mashallah. Thank you again for joining, and we're going to go ahead and get started.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Dr. Rania Awad, and I'm the Executive Director and co-founder of Madistan. Last year, in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, it became clear that the public health, social, economic, and educational upheavals were exacerbating an already critical mental health vacuum in Muslim communities. To top that, there was very concerning research coming out of my lab at Stanford University, the Muslim Mental Health and Islamic Psychology Lab. We understood that Muslims were uniquely at risk of the rise of Islamophobia, institutional discrimination at all levels of society, and considerable mental health barriers from community stigma. Now, while the Stanford lab was producing research that was far-reaching in impact and importance, there was no community-facing partner that could take this crucial research, synthesize it, and help modify the Muslim mental health narrative through community outreach, educational programming, workshops, and trainings. And because conversations surrounding mental health have been held with strong suspicion and wariness in our Muslim communities, despite our very rich Islamic heritage dedicated to psychological well-being, if anyone managed to overcome the stigma of seeking mental health support today, they're often finding themselves unable to find, access, or afford professional therapists who offer religiously and culturally congruent care to address the Muslim communities. Alhamdulillah, 1 year into the COVID-19 pandemic, and through a unique collaboration between Stanford's Muslim Mental Health and Islamic Psychology Lab and a community advisory board of Muslim leaders and mental health professionals, Madistan was born. In the blessed month of Ramadan, I'm often asked, what does Madistan mean? It is the shortened word for Bimaristan. Bimar means the ill person, and stan is the place of. Now, in Arabic, this is also the daughter Shifa. In our Islamic heritage, the Bimaristans were hospitals found all throughout Muslim lands. And what really inspired us to choose the name Madistan is the astonishing fact that it was the Muslims who designed the very first hospitals in human history to have psychiatric wards and pay this close attention to mental health. We at Madistan today want to revive that tradition and break free of the stigma against mental health that is crippling our communities. And alhamdulillah, less than 1 year, we have been able to work hard towards that goal. Allow me to share with you what I mean. We've been invited to present at 3 national convenings announced by the White House of the United States. These trainings were partnered with the U.S. Department of Human Health Services, the HHS, the Center for Disease Control, the CDC, and also present for the State of Colorado's Suicide Commission. On all of these national platforms, we were asked for expert advice on Muslim mental health, particularly the difficult topic of suicide. It's been a real honor to speak on these platforms, and it also speaks to what we bring to the table. In our first year at Madistan, we've been featured in at least 75 different news outlets like the Associated Press, NPR, the New York Times, the Tribune, CBC, NBC, Al Jazeera, and so many more across the country and the globe. There's been at least 85 news articles written about our work in just under a year, including our own opinion pieces or op-eds featured in USA Today and Religion News Services, co-authored by leading Islamic voices like our Shaykh Omar Sulaiman and others. And at the national Muslim community level, we have officially hosted the first suicide response trainings custom tailored for Muslims and have trained more than 250 imams, religious leaders, community leaders, with more planned on the way. We have a dedicated team of 7 individuals working on just that project alone. And in this past year at Madistan, we hosted 15 workshops and seminars, healing circles and learning circles that cover topics like coping with COVID, harvesting resilience, spiritual abuse, finding closure in complicated grief, domestic violence, navigating family dynamics, betrayal and hypocrisy, mental health in our Black Muslim communities, and much more. Our educational programs have generated over 10,000 views collectively, and we post on major social media platforms nearly daily about mental health information for Muslims for the thousands of our followers. On the clinic side, we're so excited to share with you that our team at Madistan has grown to 10 clinicians between our Muslim mental health initiative on college campuses like UC Berkeley and Stanford University, and in our clinic itself. And we're so excited to tell you about it, the soft launch of our Madistan clinic, which we hope to do a full launch with your support this year, inshallah. Speaking of your support, this is where we need your help. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "There is no disease that Allah has created except that He has also created its treatment." There is a high demand amongst Muslims to meet mental health professionals who can help them. Muslims are struggling with high-stake mental health issues and are being left untreated and on long wait lists. Our Muslim brothers and sisters are trying to seek out treatment, but we need your support to provide it with the official launch of our clinic. With your support, we can officially launch Madistan's holistic mental health clinic this year and ensure that we're able to meet the high demands of therapy, provide professional and affordable clinical mental health care for our Muslim sisters and brothers. We look forward to your financial support and, most importantly, to your du'as.
All right, alhamdulillah. Inshallah, for folks who were unfamiliar with Madistan, that gave a little bit of a background. Alhamdulillah, the video does need a bit of updating. This past month, we've actually surpassed 1,000 hours of sessions in our clinic, alhamdulillah, with the support of the community. So really just to pull that all together, Madistan as an organization is a clinical, educational, and research-based initiative inspired by the historical functions of traditional medicines, as Dr. Rania was talking about, providing individual holistic treatment for the body, mind, and soul. And as an organization, Madistan's goal is to revive this Islamic function of medicines by leading professional clinical care, education, and research in advancing holistic mental and spiritual wellness through programs like today's Learning Circle, inshallah. All right, to get us started, so today's Learning Circle is Breaking the Stigma, Men's Mental Health. We're joined by our esteemed speakers, mashallah, Brother Edmund Arroyo and Shaykh Suhail Mullah. And to give a bit more background about them, inshallah, we can go ahead and start with Shaykh Suhail. So Shaykh Suhail Mullah is the director of the Los Angeles branch of the Khalil Center, a community spiritual and psychological wellness center. Shaykh Suhail currently serves as resident scholar at the Islamic Society of West Valley in Canoga Park, California. He also serves as the IOK Muslim chaplain at CSUN, or Cal State University Northridge. And in addition to this, Shaykh Suhail serves as a religious advisor to the Ummah Community Clinic and is the co-founder of the Muslim Marriage Rejuvenation Retreat. He's worked as a social worker in the Los Angeles Unified School District and Silmar Juvenile Court, and has served as an imam at the Islamic Society of Orange County and as an interim executive director and director of mental health at Access California Services. Shaykh Suhail earned his bachelor's degree in African American Studies from Cal State University Northridge, his master's in social welfare from UCLA, and another bachelor's degree in Sharia Islamic law from one of the world's most prestigious Islamic seminaries at Azhar University in Cairo, Egypt, mashallah. He's also completed a 2-year Islamic studies program at Al-Sharia Al-Muhammadiyya in Cairo, Egypt, where he studied privately with numerous Azhari scholars, mashallah. Thank you so much for joining us, Shaykh Suhail, today. To introduce Brother Edmund, inshallah. We're so happy to have you here and grateful. Brother Edmund Arroyo is a licensed clinical social worker and certified school social worker. He's a graduate of the University of Illinois at Chicago Jane Addams School of Social Work and Knox College in Galesburg, Illinois. He's the founder of the Heart Speak Institute, where the goal is to provide counseling and education to individuals, couples, and families in an environment that respects their individual and cultural dynamics. As a result of his extensive experience counseling families and couples, Brother Edmund Arroyo has been asked to present on marriage and family issues at numerous conferences. He's been doing individual, group, and family counseling since 1998, and with experience in hospital, public schools, and child welfare agencies, he has worked with clients on many types of individual, family, and societal issues. He's been conducting yearly parenting seminars, teacher institute trainings, and motivational speaking since 2001. MashaAllah, thank you so much to both of you for joining us today. We're truly humbled to have you here with us. Alhamdulillah. So to just briefly go over the objectives of today's learning circle, inshallah. Today, our goals are to address the stigmas and social misconceptions surrounding men's mental health, to discuss the Islamic perspective on the well-being of the mind, body, and soul, and to learn about available wellness resources, inshallah, towards the end of the session. So I guess to introduce myself, I haven't done that yet either. My name is Jinan Aweda. I'm the program coordinator at Medistan. So I support with the coordination of learning circles like today, our healing circles, our suicide response trainings, and any other programming within Medistan. Again, we're going through the background currently as to why we're talking about men's mental health, and we'll touch a little bit more on that, inshallah, towards the end of the entire introduction. To start us off today, Shaykh Suhail is going to talk about the unique difficulties experienced by Muslim men which affect their mental health, his work in working with university students, as well as his work with adults and marriage counseling. And then Brother Edmund will speak to us about his work with youth in schools, inshallah, and how we foster mental health care from a young age, as well as his experience in marriage and men's health. Towards the end of the circle, inshallah, we'll really talk about those material resources and examples that we can learn from. So how do we begin to seek support? What resources are available? How do we access them? And we'll learn about prophetic examples of, trial and how we're able to cope with it, inshallah. All right. So just a couple of learning circle agreements, inshallah. We purify our intentions. We're here to seek knowledge for Allah's sake. We treat everyone respectfully. We're here to listen with compassion and curiosity. We share our words or our silent presence, and we withhold judgment and sharing opposing views. We keep comments relevant to our current situation or the current topic, inshallah. And of course, no disrespect or derogatory commentary will be tolerated within the learning circle, inshallah. Okay, so as we all know, inshallah, the topic of our learning circle is breaking the stigma of men's mental health or Muslim men's mental health. I guess just to kind of ground us, this month is June is Men's Health Month, and why we find this learning circle to be so important and pivotal to our community is really understanding the statistics of, 1 in 10 men who experience depression or anxiety, less than half of them will receive treatment. More than 4 times as many men as women die by suicide every year. More than 3 million men in the US have panic disorder, agoraphobia, or really any other phobia. And men have a higher death rate from the most leading cause of death, also including suicide. So it's really important that we continue to talk about this important topic, to provide resources and to provide a space where we're able to ask questions, inshallah. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Shaykh Suhail, inshallah, to talk to us about the particular difficulties of seeking mental health care, or the difficulties which exacerbate mental health care, particularly to Muslim men, and his own experience in his line of work, inshallah.
All right. Jazakumullah khairan. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Inshallah, nice to be with you all on this, I guess, afternoon for me, maybe evening for others. And I appreciate being invited to this important discussion on men's mental health. And so I think I'll talk a little bit about men's mental health in the realm of the university setting, and then men's mental health in the realm of marriage. And because there's definitely some overlap, but there's some particularities between how Muslim men navigate or don't navigate mental health support in these different spheres of life. So, one of the big, and I'll talk about challenges, right? And barriers, difficulties, reasons why men maybe don't step forward And one of the things that I've seen over the years working on the university level with young Muslim men is that there is a lot of difficulty for young Muslim men to find mentorship on university campuses, to find perhaps older Muslim men or big brothers, so to speak, those that can work with them at this important transitional phase of life. Going into university oftentimes we forget it's a huge transition for a lot of young men. Some of them are leaving home for the first time. Some of them are living alone for the first time. Some of them are just navigating basic life functions for the first time, let alone the academic rigor that comes with going to, universities that have their own demands and so forth. And then not having the support that they may have had in their communities, maybe their local imam, their local youth group leader, their uncles, whoever it may be that supported them. Many young men are stripped from that. And so, finding that voice of guidance in a time when they need it most is lacking with a lot of young men. And so that becomes that there's a gap, right? And I mean, I'll tell you this, and this is just straight up real talk. I'm a social worker and graduated, 25 years ago with my master's. That was 25 years ago. Back 25 years ago, in this field in particular, men who were in the field of social work there are some question marks around their manliness, so to speak. And I'm going to be, again, real talk. Now, fast forward 25 years, social work by and large is dominated by queer men. And that is a challenge for if there's young Muslim men that want to go into this field in particular, and perhaps other fields as well, other fields in the humanities, where that's especially challenging for Muslim men who want to maintain a level of integrity as it relates to their understanding of their deen and wanting to live that. And so, that's a challenge. So university can be a tough place in terms of finding that role model. The other thing that, I've experienced or heard from many young Muslim men in the university setting is the fact that it is difficult for them to find within the resources that they have, even if they want to access mental health support, which those young men that are brave enough to take that step, there's a lot of challenges there. You go to university counseling services and you have, it's hard to find somebody that looks like you. It's hard to find somebody that understands you. There is almost no one in the field in academic settings. And by the way, so for example, I've been at UCLA for a number of years, and they're what they call CAPS, Counseling and Psychological Services department is massive. They have about 70 therapists on staff, 70 therapists, but there's not one that can speak to the Muslim experience authentically. Not one, let alone a Muslim man, which is more rare, a Muslim male that works in the field, right? So finding people that they can align with and get that support that they need without having to do, I created this term, Muslims in the field of who seek mental health treatment have to do a lot of backsplaining. They have to explain who they are to the person that they're seeking help and guidance and support from, so that that person can understand their world. And without that backsplain, they don't get us, right? And so that's a huge challenge for many. And then just the general pressures of trying to conform, in the university world. The university experience, which oftentimes can be so antithetical to the moral being of what a young Muslim man who, grew up let's say in a masjid community, and that's all they knew. And now they find themselves in this world where they're navigating alcohol, drugs, substances, being pushed into relationships, that don't conform or don't align with their Muslim identity, and so forth, right? So, and then oftentimes the other barriers, standard barriers, of just having a lack of support of home, where if especially in immigrant families, as sons of immigrant parents, fathers who maybe just struggled it out, they worked hard to set up life in this country. They never saw their father being able to express weakness. They never learned that level of emotional, openness in their family setting, and then they carry that with them, right? So there's all of these things in the universities. Then you look at men in the realm of marriage. If to take on that last point I just made about Muslim men are often not taught emotional intelligence, or don't have live models in front of them. There's dynamics in Muslim households where there's very poor communication between mom and dad, between there's a very oftentimes a parental dynamic that they don't take. Young Muslim men don't take what they should from home. That's not always the case by any means, but in many households, that's the case. And so now you're married. Now you're supposed to be supportive of your wife. You're supposed to know how to navigate the emotional ups and downs of marriage. You're supposed to do all of these things, but you've never seen that in action. If that's the case, right? Again, it's not always the case, but if that's the case, well, then what do you do? How do you do? Where do you go? Who do you turn to, right? And then just the simple fact that it's tough on the ego, and men typically have a bigger ego than women. And why do I need to go to someone else to tell me how to treat my wife? Why am I going to open up about? I had a man that was with me the other day, and opening up about some matters in his home, and in how he's treated his wife. And it's a person in leadership, and broke down crying because it was so hard for me. This is him sharing. It was so hard for me to get to this point, to open up myself, to allow myself to be vulnerable, to admit to myself that I needed the help and the support, right? And so it's a general challenge amongst men, and I think even there's more particular difficulties in Muslim men stepping forward. We also have in the Muslim community, it's important to acknowledge there's a lot of generational trauma, especially in immigrant communities and in Native communities, where again, how the image that young men today now who are now married, and who are now supposed to have it figured out, not only did they not see a full portrait at home of what an emotionally grounded and connected husband and father look like, but oftentimes they saw the opposite, because of the fact that perhaps their father came from a place where there was war, where there was poverty, there was serious societal dysfunction that, of course, then feeds into the individual homes that are part of that society, and we're just really, in many times, one generation removed from that. And we've seen that in, I don't want to name particular communities, ethnic communities or anything of that sort, but that is the case in many Muslim communities. And then, of course, that leads to the fact that there was a lack of role modeling oftentimes in our homes where, just men being open with their feelings and just being able to express themselves in a way that is actually that Islam advocates for, and maybe we'll talk about later on about how the Prophet ﷺ navigated emotions and such. We don't see that in our homes, and therefore now we find ourselves in a marital situation where there's challenges that we never expected. We never realized that marriage is about unifying a vision for a family. Marriage by itself, in and of itself, naturally, it is. Ideally, it's supposed to be something that unites, but the reality is that in its essence, it's conflictual. It's two different people who come from two different backgrounds, who have their own worldviews and perspectives. And this is how I think the world should work. Now I have to merge with this other person, and I have to give and take, and I have to learn how to, capacity what this person is bringing to the table. And if we haven't seen, an iteration of that in our own lifetimes, it's hard to do. It's hard to just instinctively know how to do that. And, and I've seen, I do a lot of work in the realm of marriage. We do these what we call the Muslim Marriage Rejuvenation Retreat. And we've been doing this for the last three years now, my wife and I. These are opportunities for couples to explore and to learn about best practices in marriage, is pretty much what it is. And I see up close and personal the difficulties that men have in terms of just navigating many aspects of marriage, accepting influence, allowing my wife to help guide me as opposed to just me feeling that I'm the man. This concept of الرجال قوامون على النساء, this is a Quranic concept that men are the maintainers, the protectors. They have a certain responsibility that they hold in marriage. But that's not a trump card. That's not a, I am in charge of everything. I am the sole voice of leadership in my family. It's a joint leadership model with me and my wife and how we raise our children. And so, if we don't have that understanding, as many men struggle with, about allowing their wife to influence them and then the other thing is, and I know I'm jumping a lot here, but I'm just putting all this stuff out on the table, right? We have in many relationships where many couples that come forward to seek help, they've done that after they've been down a long road. And oftentimes they go and they seek help when it's late in the game. And that's a problem in the Muslim community. And the reason why it's a problem is because when you seek help, it's never too late. But there's challenges with going in late. And one of the biggest challenges is that, well, oftentimes the marital relationship has been so stretched. One person has emotionally distanced themselves from the relationship just to be able to survive and to live. And so now they've recognized that, okay, we need help. And now and it's usually the man who's the one who hesitates. Okay, now I'm ready, because he sees his marital reality in shambles on many levels. And so now he steps forward and he's ready. But what's happened? There's this emotional injury, emotional pain, these grievances that are there on the other side. with his wife, and he's saying, well, look, I'm ready to work now, and now you're being resistant. Well, the reality is that there is so much pain that's there that really needs to be overcome in the process. So, I mean, all of these realities that really make that we find in the community, and I could go on, but I think I'll stop here, just for the purpose of being able to keep it concise.
Jazakallah khair, Shaykh Suhail. I think that's a great segue into Brother Edmund's portion, inshallah, talking about how you were saying sometimes when people actually seek help, it is too late. And now Brother Edmund will talk about how the necessity of talking about mental health care and really understanding when it is time for support from a younger age into marriage, inshallah. I'll pass it to you.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for having me. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa alihi wa sahbihi sallam. So, Sheikh Suhail, mashallah, so refreshing. You speak my language, mashallah. So much knowledge, and you could tell tons of experience in working with married couples. I wanted to we have to definitely talk more after this Zoom, inshallah. So talking about starting from young. So alhamdulillah, we have a lot of developing material out there now when it comes to, at least in public schools. And so I think for the Islamic schools, we really got to pull some of this in, because there's this recognition that along with what started off probably about 20 years ago in character education in schools, they realize that, like, okay, some of the things that were taught through religious institutions growing up, whether the church or even the mosques or the synagogues, isn't necessarily happening at home. So they were starting to teach those values in school, whether it's, being good to your neighbor, sharing and these kind of things, serving your community. And so now what there's an emphasis on in public schools is social emotional learning. And so there are all kinds of books. It's a big industry right now. And essentially what the aim is, it's to equip young people with a large vocabulary of words that describe their emotions, rather than just the simple ones like that movie. I don't remember what it was. It was like a Disney movie. It was like sad, happy, mad. There was like 5 words that describe emotions. And so now there's this thing called a mood meter that came out of Yale, and I can't remember how many words, but it's probably at least like 50 words that can describe your mood or your emotions. And so they're starting to use this in grade schools and trying to help kids understand, okay, what color are you in right now? And really what it's doing is it's creating a self-awareness. And this is huge when it comes to us as Muslims. I always like to mention that, that the phrase in Arabic, kif halik, right? Or kif had, right? Literally translates like, how's your state, or what's your state? Right. And so this idea of being conscious of your state is not new to us as Muslims. And if we just actually paid attention before we answer that question, like how am I right now? And so that's what's happening. This self-awareness in public schools in America is like trying to help kids become more aware of what's the state I'm in, what can I do about it? Can I shift into another state? Can I make other people aware of the fact that I'm in this state and I need a break, or whatever it is? And so we do that all the way into high school now for a lot of high schools. And that's just one of those efforts out there to try to address mental health from an early age. The other thing that's going on when it comes to social emotional learning is bringing more awareness around mental illness. And the stat that you had in the beginning of the slideshow was 1 in 10 men, I think you said, suffer from depression or anxiety. And I think it's much higher than that, actually. Maybe that's a clinical diagnosis. But one of the things I like to tell people, especially young people, is that it's not whether or not or you're going to struggle with depression or anxiety. It's when you're going to struggle with depression or anxiety. At some point in your life, you will be depressed. Period. Right? But what are you going to do about it? So whether it's because your mother passes away or your dog passes away or whatever, or you don't get into medical school, whatever it is. And sometimes those depressions last for 3 days and sometimes it lasts for a long time. But then that's where that education comes in. At what point do you need to seek help? Is it just a conversation with your mom or your brother about it, and that might be enough? Or at what point is it more of a clinical issue where you're stuck and you need some professional assistance to help get you out of that state? Because we all have the potential to get in that state. One example I'll give people sometimes is, I do a lot of public speaking, and I love it. And especially when it's a topic like this that I love talking about and educating people on. And one time I was at the high school that I work at, and I had to get on the intercom and give an announcement. And in the middle of the announcement, my voice started to shake and I started to like lose get disoriented. I'm like, okay, wait, what was I going to say? And I was like, what's going on with me? And when I evaluated that afterwards, I had to realize that I went into that speech at a high level of stress already. So whenever you public speak or do anything publicly, there's a little increase in anxiety. That's life. That's how it works. But what I realized is that I had a lot going on at that time in my life. And so my level of stress was really high. So when it came to adding just that little bit of extra, it was a tipping point where it was affecting me physiologically, right? And that's another thing for us to consider is when it comes to seeking help, and we'll talk about that later, but there's a lot of ways we evaluate that as social workers or as therapists. And one of them is, is it affecting your health in any way? Is it affecting your family, your relationship? Is it affecting your job? And for young people, that's school. So when I do premarital counseling, one of the things I talk about with people that are about to get married, I always say the purpose of this is not for you to decide whether the person is good for you or not. I'm hoping that that's been decided already. And you're just here to kind of maximize the happiness and the calmness and peace in your marriage. And I say premarital counseling is kind of like watching the news in the morning before you go to work. It helps you kind of figure out what the weather is going to be like, or before that picnic or whatever it is, what the weather is going to be like and what the traffic's going to be like. Neither of them you have power over. You can't change either. But at least when they come, when you hit that traffic jam or when the thunderstorm comes, you're like, oh, here it is. And you're prepared for it. And you have less of an emotional reaction to it. So when you hit that roadblock with your spouse in marriage, it's like, oh, okay, here it is. Edmund talked about this in premarital counseling, and I guess a lot of couples struggle with this. So now it keeps me from saying my wife is such a bad person or my husband is such a whatever, because we're hitting this roadblock. So really, that's the way we got to think about teaching young people and getting them talking about mental health and having these conversations from a young age. It could start when they're 5. My son, it started for me with my son when I'd read him a bedtime story, and we'd say our surahs. We always say the kuls, right? Like, let's say your kuls, right? And so we say the surahs. And then when he's laying in bed, I would say, okay, now take a really deep breath. And up until this age, he's 17 now, mashallah. If I walk by his room at night, I notice he's still up and it's late and he's laying in his bed, I'll say, take a deep breath as I'm walking by, and I just walk into my room. And it's just a reminder that we can control our body through other things, taking deep breaths. And we'll talk more about that. But, as adults and going in later into life, one of the things I was thinking about that Shaykh Suhail was saying is that, like when it comes to going to a therapist, he talked about backsplaining. I love that term. And that's one of the things that the Black community in America has realized is that it really benefits them if they go to a Black therapist, because they don't have to do that backsplaining. And they've realized that especially recently, because, in kind of the paradigm that we have right now, no thanks to social media, is this idea that if somebody is making you upset, eliminate them out of your life. They're toxic, and there's all these names for them, and it's a reason just get them out of your life. And in mainstream America, a lot of therapists have no problem saying, don't talk to your parents anymore. They're bad for you. They're toxic. They do this. They make your body react this way. And there's a place for that in very few cases. But I talk to a lot of my clients about, okay, you can create space without eliminating people out of your life. And so when you tell a Black person that, you tell a Muslim, okay, eliminate your parents out of your life, when they have such a strong connection to responsibility to their mom or their dad, especially their mom in the Muslim community and in the Black community and in the Latino community, a lot of immigrant communities, it creates a huge dissonance within themselves and a lot of shame that creates other problems in their lives. And so, going to somebody that understands your cultural background, I've had people come to me, Muslims come to me after seeing a therapist for years, and I'll ask them. The most famous one was a gentleman came to my office, and he was standing in the middle of my office with gloves on, and he moved from out of state. And I said, I thought you were seeing a therapist for a long time. He said, yeah, for 2 years. And I said, okay, well, what did you guys do? And he said, I don't know, but he was awesome. And I was like, why was he so awesome? And he's like, he was an expert in fiqh by the time we got to finish working together. And I'm like, so he basically just used you to educate him on this concept of fiqh in Islam that was so foreign and blowing his mind. He's like, whoa, there's that many rules, that he was feeding your anxiety, right? And so I, we really need to think about that. Somebody either has to have been raised around Muslims and very connected to the Muslim community, knowing them. I could tell you so many stories like that, or a Muslim themselves and have a great understanding. They don't even have to be a scholar or anything like that, but just to understand that experience, the cultures that fall within our faith and in this country, but then also the religion and how that dictates our whole paradigm and worldview and everything else. Let's see here. I wanted to say one more thing before my time is up. So the other thing I want to talk about really quickly when it comes to men is one of the experiences I'm seeing now, and I don't know how it is in other cities, but so in Chicago, and I think you see it on social media too, is that for men, for a big part when it comes to teenage years, we all know, everybody talks about teenagers and the hormonal changes that happen with teenagers. And then men have this big break in their life where they don't have to really deal with fluctuations of hormones until their late 30s and early 40s. And all of a sudden you start seeing a drop off testosterone. And a lot of men really struggle with that because it can make them feel a little bit less energetic, affects them with intimacy and all these other things. And sometimes they feel mood swings, sadness, like out of the blue, where they've never felt that before. And so the answer to that in America, because commercialized, is billboards that say, are you struggling with low T? Let's basically give you steroids. And then you have these men who go on steroids who are 45, 50 years old, and they start getting all huge and jacked, and they start having problems in their marriage because guess what? They also have like roid rage, and they become temperamental, and then their wives are like, what's wrong with you? And then they're not now on the same page in life with their wife, going through life's changes because they've now intervened medically in a way that's potentially harmful to couples and definitely the individual, because then they become dependent on it. What do you do then when you're taking roids for a long time? And all of a sudden, if you stop taking them, then what? Guess what? You have to go back to getting old again. So I'll stop there and inshallah we'll move on to the next questions. Thank you.
Jazakallah khair, Brother Edmund. It's like you guys planned this before you got here. That's a great segue into Shaykh Suhail's next part, inshallah, about prophetic examples of trial and what are the prophetic examples of coping and how can we have healthy coping styles. And then inshallah we'll move into more of a similar topic with Brother Edmund as well after, inshallah. I'll pass it to you, Shaykh Suhail.
Mullah. MashaAllah, my brother Edmund, I don't know how we haven't crossed paths, man, yet, but we have, inshallah. We have definitely some notes to share and such. Love hearing you talk and hearing about your experiences in the community, which seem to be so deep, mashallah. So You know, one of the things I think that's such an important starting point for this discussion about prophetic resiliency, coping, dealing with life's trials, and so on and so forth, is understanding who the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was in terms of how he understood himself to be a man as it relates to how he carried himself emotionally. And there's a beautiful example that speaks volumes to me about our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that I think is so important for us to understand. There was an incident one time when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in one narration it said that he's bearing his son, in another it said that he's bearing his grandson, and as he is at the gravesite, and of course the community is there with him, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is crying, and when there are tears coming down his face, one of the Sahaba, Sa'd radiallahu anhu, he says Ya Rasul, he says wa anta ya Rasulullah, and he says, and you, O Messenger of Allah. In other words, as if he's saying, and you, O Messenger of Allah, if anyone knows that death is coming and death will come when it's due to come, it's you. If anyone knows that life is full of trials and tribulations, it's you. If anyone understands that we have to accept what Allah has given us, no matter how difficult it is, it's you. So, Anta ya Rasul, and even you, O Messenger of Allah, like you're crying. Look at what the Prophet ﷺ says. He says, Inna al-ayna la tadma' wa inna al-qalba la yahzan. He says that the eyes, they shed tears, and the heart, it feels sadness. As if the Prophet is telling Sa'd, he's saying, don't try to regulate my emotions. Don't try to stop me from expressing what I need to express. This is a feeling, this is a human emotion that Allah has placed inside of me, and I am a man and I cry, and I display sadness, and I display happiness, and I display anger, and I display frustration, and I have a whole myriad of feelings just like others do. Yes, how we navigate those emotions and how we display them in a way that is befitting to how a Muslim should carry themselves is important. But to put a plug or to put a cap, a lid on my emotions, why? Who said that? Who said that? And a lot of times, for example, in marriage, or in general in life, when kids are kids, they're told, don't cry, don't be sad, don't be mad, don't be this, don't be that. We don't learn how to have emotion, and then for it to be carried out and oftentimes we tell people these things. Why? Because we're uncomfortable as the receiver, on the receiving end. It's uncomfortable to me to hear or to see you display these negative emotions, sadness, anger, anxiety. So I just tell you, stop, right? And it's such a problematic perspective from how the one who's there listening to this other person, it's such a problematic way in which to engage people. Rather, the Prophet ﷺ, he's teaching us like be who you are, express yourself the way you need to express yourself. And in the next line, the Prophet ﷺ, he says, وَلَا نَقُولُ إِلَّا مَا يُرْضِي رَبَّنَا تَعَالَى. But we don't say anything that's displeasing to Allah. I'm going to show emotion, but I'm not going to say, why, ya Allah, this is horrible, my life is miserable, I can't believe that you put me in this pain and this difficulty. That's no, that we don't go. We accept what Allah has given us, but to display the emotion, I need to have that emotion to be balanced. Otherwise, what I'm going to put a lid on this, and what, like, how am I even, that emotion that needs to come out is going to come out in other ways that are unhealthy, that are dysfunctional, that are poor coping methodologies or mechanisms. So I think that's a really important, sort of starting point when we talk about prophetic coping, just understanding emotions. And Brother Edmund made some reference to how we navigate emotions and the proper way by which we do that too. And then if you look at some other aspects of the Prophet ﷺ, I mean, the Prophet ﷺ was a beautiful example for us in every area of life. لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. That our Prophet ﷺ, he understood what the purpose of marriage was. Marriage for the Prophet was his internal support mechanism. When his wife, Sayyidah Khadija, when she passed, it was extremely heavy on the Prophet ﷺ. Why? Because if you look from day one, when the first revelation comes, the Prophet, he comes to whom? He comes to his wife after he gets the revelation. He's extremely distraught. And he says, لَقَدْ خَشِيتُ عَلَى نَفْسِي. Like, I'm afraid for myself. I don't know what's going on with me. And what does his wife do? She consoles him in the most beautiful way. كَلَّا وَاللَّهِ لَا يُخْزِيكَ اللَّهُ أَبَدًا. That Allah will never forsake you. You help people, you support the poor, you carry the burdens of the weak, etc. And she validates him. So the Prophet, he navigates, or he leans on, he leverages his wife in a way that's very healthy. And in all of his marriages, you see the Prophet, he's incredibly open in his relationships, and what an important support mechanism that is, that we have. He's open to the advice of Salama, when they go to Hudaybiyah, and when they go to Umrah, and they're prevented from making Umrah, and and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, we're done with our Umrah, and the Sahaba like, what are you talking about? And they don't listen to him. The Prophet tells them to take off their ihram and to shave their heads, and they don't listen. Who does he go to? He goes to his tent, and his wife Salama tells the Prophet sallallahu, just go out and do the action yourself, and they'll follow. He takes the advice of her, and there's numerous examples of that. How the Prophet ﷺ has this, beautiful, supportive relationship with his wives, and he takes from them, and of course they take from him. The Prophet ﷺ, he has very healthy social connections. He's the Prophet of God. But that doesn't mean that he's free of social needs. That doesn't mean that he doesn't need companionship. Abu Bakr is his best friend and his closest companion. He has an intimate relationship with Umar. So he has these relationships that are so meaningful to him in his life. And that's an important thing for us, that we have meaningful social relationships. We have intimate friendships within our home and outside of our home. One thing that's lost in the social media world is oftentimes, deep relationships. People know 1,000 people, but they don't really know one person on any level of any depth, right? So having deep social relationships is so important. And then the Prophet ﷺ has a very intimate relationship with his Creator, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So he has this full life engagement on all of these different planes of existence, outside of his home, inside of his home, in his own private, in his deepest private, personal relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He has complete trust of Allah. He's patient upon life's trials when they come to him. And he has this, he expresses it once so beautifully, right? when the Prophet goes through one of his most difficult experiences, being run out of Ta'if, when they chased him out of the city, and they threw stones at him, and his blessed feet are bleeding, and he goes, and later he makes dua, right? This famous dua that he makes. A lot of events happen, but this one dua that he makes, and this one line in the dua that he makes, he says, وَإِن لَمْ يَكُنْ غَضَبُكَ عَلَيَّ فَلَا أُبَالِي. Yeah, Ya Allah, if you're not upset with me, as long as you're not upset with me, and I'm doing what I need to do, and I'm living, I don't care. Everything else, I can deal with life. I can deal with the difficulties. And so I'm not saying that it's always that easy, right? Like, yeah, hey, look, man, just man up and deal with your stuff. I'm not trying to say that, right? Like it's that simple, but I'm just showing an example of how the Prophet ﷺ had these extremely important relationships in these different aspects of his life that carried him. And so we take a great example from him in that regard. So much more to say, I mean, about this subject, right? So much more to learn, particulars to pull from the Prophet ﷺ's life, but we'll suffice with that, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh Suhail. That was amazing, and those examples are so relevant to what we're talking about today. Inshallah, we'll pass it to Brother Edmund to talk to us about tangible ways that we're able to seek support, mechanisms that we're able to use to support us in our journeys in accessing mental health, and coping with any sort of trial, inshallah.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Hold on 1 second. I'm just getting it. There we go. Okay. So I love that story from Ta'if, because that story always reminds me that, that our Prophet, peace be upon him, also had low points, attempted something to do good and was punished for it in this world. So it's felt to him, he suffered for it, I guess should be the phrase I should use. And so that it's a reminder to me that sometimes in life you could have the best of intentions to do something, and it could fall really flat, and maybe also cause a lot of discomfort and pain to you. So so one of the things that I want us to think about when it comes to seeking help, and I think I'd first like to start off with the prevention part of it, and as adults, and that is that there's some research coming out now talking about the child-centered marriage, and how people of my generation, who are in their maybe 40s and 50s now, we were too child-centered in how we raised our kids, to the point that we were so consumed by putting our kids in 20 different activities, and all weekend was wrapped up in running to this event and that event and this event, that we weren't focusing on our own emotional, physical health, the health of our marriage, our relationships, or our friendships, which Shaykh Suhail talked about. So like this is something that I always felt strongly about, and I ask my clients, one of the things I'll say is that you need to look at it as if, we've all heard of this term, like, how full is your bucket, that kind of concept. But you got to picture like a bucket in your life, and most Muslims know what a pressure cooker is. And thanks to the Instapot, most America does too now. But, we had to picture both of those things in our life. We have to have things for our bucket that make us feel alive, that bring us joy, a sense of adventure, whether that's travel, trying new food, going fishing, taking a hike, whatever those things are that make you feel alive, laughing with friends. I like to tell a story to a lot of my young couples how I have three brothers, and a sister. And I went to my family's house early in my marriage, and we, when you grow up with brothers, you all tease each other. And so we were like teasing each other. We were laughing so hard, and we were leaving. My wife was really quiet, and I said, I said, well, what's the matter? And like most wives, she said nothing. And then I said, no, honestly, what's going on? You're quiet. And then she said, well, you never laugh with me like that. And I just sat there for a second. And I said, you know what? I don't. And that's okay. I don't think I expect that from you. I don't know if I'm ever going to laugh that hard to the point of tears. Maybe, inshallah, for married for 20 years plus, but I have 25 years with my brothers, inside jokes and teasing and a rhythm that we're only 6 months into. And so what we got to understand, the message behind that is that your spouse can't be everything to you in this world when it comes to relationships. And a lot of Muslim couples make that mistake. They get married and they disappear. Maybe they see each other's families, but then they don't necessarily see friends or anything else. And so we can't put that pressure on our spouse to be everything to you because they'll fail. And so understanding that we need those different relationships in our life to make us feel alive, you could have a certain level of comfort with different relationships in your life. And then the pressure cooker is more about what calms you, what releases tension. That could be running or some kind of exercise. It could be salah, whatever it is. And times we know, there's expansion and contraction when it comes to spirituality. And so sometimes you're praying and it feels really good. And then sometimes you're praying and then you finish and you're like, I don't remember if I did all four or rakat or whatever. And so you weren't really into it. And that's life. And so understanding that I actually had a coworker recently said to me, she said something about doing yoga and she goes, you have like that prayer thing you do. She's like, I don't have anything like that. So like when I go to yoga, I don't even see it as exercise. I just want to like clear my mind, and that's why you're seeing yoga centers everywhere in America now and mindfulness centers, these kind of things, meditation centers, because people are craving for what we already have. If we just understand that these things all have a place in our life and it's important to maintain them. So when it comes to seeking help, like I mentioned earlier, it's important that when it comes to ourselves or somebody that we live with, our family members, it's important that we understand that if it's interfering, first of all, one of the things I like to say is if it's lasting longer than a month, your sadness or your anxiety, and you're noticing that you probably should get some help for it. And what people need to understand is that going to see a therapist doesn't mean you're committing to seeing them once a week for next year. Sometimes it might help if you just have 3 sessions. And like I was saying earlier with the premarital counseling, sometimes just hearing that some things are normal. Oh yeah, that's a normal reaction. I had a woman who came in and she had her son had passed away about 6 months before. And she came in, she goes, I don't know if I'm going crazy, but I just don't want to go back to work yet. And she's like, and people are telling me I should be over it by now. And I said, and how many of those people lost a son? 0, right? So sometimes just hearing that your experience of this life event, whatever it is a very normal reaction to somebody who loses their son unexpectedly. It's devastating. And most people aren't going to understand you. And so just to go to see a professional who's probably dealt with this before and can normalize some of that for you, can sometimes just 3 or 4 sessions can be really helpful. And then maybe you see them once every couple months for the next year, just to kind of see how things are going. And then you obviously have situations where it's really significant mental illness, the chemical imbalances like bipolar or schizophrenia, which again, you see times where it hits in life, like in 17, 18, and then there's another time that kind of hormonal change I was talking about, late 30s, where it hits people as well. And again, the earlier you can intervene for those, you're much better off, because otherwise it's hard to get people on medication for those if you wait too long. Most communities in America now, alhamdulillah, have a local county health department. So, and I'm not from California, but I know that you have the 988 hotline now. Instead of calling 911, 988 is just a hotline for mental health. They just present to somebody the challenges that you're having, and they can refer you to a resource in the community. If somebody's reached out in the past year, they probably have been very frustrated, because in the past year it was very difficult to find any openings with any experienced therapist in the community. But I could tell you that within the past maybe like 3 months, it's opening up again. So you're having a lot more openings for experienced mental health professionals. And then also there are text options out there. So a lot of, you just got to kind of, we have Google available to everybody, and you can just ask, for crisis hotline, and there are people that are experienced dealing with crises, and they can kind of give you some guidance on those things. But a lot of times, seeking out somebody like anybody else, if you know a cousin or family member that's been to a therapist, it helps if you have somebody that you trust, that does good work, because that's important. Like I mentioned earlier, there are my dad actually, he used to work for a labor job for the phone company back when we all had landlines. And he used to tell me, he'd say, Edmund, there are bad, doctors, there are bad therapists, and there are bad phone men. He's like, you just got to find the good ones. And it's true, because he'll tell you stories of doctors he went to. He's like, can you believe what this guy told me to do? So, it's important that you find somebody that's reputable and that somebody else has experienced and worked with. The other thing I want to say is that, when it comes to like my example of the bucket, and I'm just going to wrap it up with this, but we got to, seeking knowledge for some people is an adventure. And it's something that can make people feel alive. And that's why people are like, I'm going to go back and get this degree, or I'm going to go study. And it's a bit of adventure. There's something exciting about it. There's an element of accomplishment with it. But we got to see mental health as seeking knowledge of the self. It's not about fixing a mental problem, but about just gaining an understanding of why do I do the things I do. And then how can I maximize my happiness, my calm, my peace, whatever it is you're looking for in life. How do I fix some of this dysfunction that's happening in my life? If you've been trying to, be calmer with your children or calmer with your spouse and you can't do it. Okay, let me try to gain some of that. And ultimately, that's what Ihsan is, like this concept of, acting and gaining knowledge in a way that would, as if Allah is watching you to perfect yourself, to work on yourself. And that's really what it is. Just like all these videos out there, people exercising now, here's the best way to do curls, and here's the best way to do this, and work on your legs, whatever. I mean, we need to focus on our mental health, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how fit you are. If your mental health is in shambles, you're going to be extremely unhappy. So I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Brother Edmund, and Jazakallah khair. So with that, we're going to move into our question and answer session, inshallah. For folks listening, please go ahead and send any questions or comments you may have. There should be a box at the bottom of the screen which allows you to submit. I do have one question that was sent to me, which is, give me 1 second. The question is saying that we've been talking about mechanisms and tools as to ways that we're able to, self-regulate and coping mechanisms for ourselves and ways that we're able to seek support. But how are we as community members, as family members, as partners able to support whoever it is in our life that is struggling through any sort of mental health problems or any sort of depression to that extent?
Well, I'll start. Bismillah. So it is hard with family members sometimes, because it is hard for anybody when you want to tell them, like, I think you should get help for something. As long as we always start with a message of care and love and concern, and not as where you're from a perspective of we're trying to fix something about them. Sharing that you're invested in their happiness as a person, and their calm and their peacefulness, their peace in their life. Or the relationships. And a big thing, for when it comes to how you can support somebody in your life, outside of getting them help, is really just listening and affirming. It's kind of like Shaykh Suhail, I keep saying that, sorry, I apologize for Shaykh Suhail said earlier, when it comes to validating people's feelings, a lot of times we tell people, the example that we'll give sometimes, if a kid falls in the playground, the two mistakes that parents make, the first one is like, you're fine. It's okay. It doesn't hurt. Get up. It's okay. And then that's denying their pain. And the second one is like, oh my God, come here. Let me see. I can't believe this playground's so dangerous. And you take them from the playground. The first one tells them their pain isn't real and their experience isn't real. And the second one says, oh, this playground's big and bad. Stay away from it. Life is dangerous. Stay away from it. And the third more appropriate approach is like, wow, that must really hurt. Let me see it. Oof. Yeah, it hurts when you get scrapes like that. It probably stings, right? Affirming their tears and their pain. And then let's bandage it up and then or rinse it off some water. It's going to sting a little bit, but then you'll be ready to get back in there and play. And you let them know that it's going to be fine. Yeah, life is tough, but we can get through it. And I'm going to help you with that. And then you're going to move on and you're going to be fine. So a big part of it is affirming what people are going through, listening, and not trying to, there's actually Brene Brown has some videos out there about the difference between sympathy and empathy. And they're pretty good. They're cartoons. And it just talks about like the things that you could say to try to help them through that.
Thank you. Anything to add on to that, Shaykh Suhail?
Sure. The only thing I would just say, I would echo everything Brother Edmund said, and he talked about listening. And, so for some people, listening comes naturally. And for others, they need to learn how to listen. And so just learning a bit of active listening skills, which are very basic and very, a little bit of a skill set that needs to be, if you have someone in your family that is struggling with their mental health, that perhaps even has a mental health disorder, then it would behoove you, if you have a very good relationship with them, but you don't feel like you know how to listen to them, or you feel like you're always compelled to give advice to them and to fix them or whatever it is, just learn these active listening skills, which, as Brother Edmund said, is, basically learning how to validate their feelings, how to let them know that you hear them. And then there is a time and a place when you ask them, is there anything you want from me? Is there anything I can help from you? Do you want me to listen? Or are you looking for some actual guidance in this particular matter? If there's a parental authority sort of relationship there, or even a peer relationship, and you ask them, you're sharing this information with me, and it sounds like you're going through a very difficult time, and I'm so happy that you trust me, and I'm more than willing to listen to you. And but do you want something more from me? With our kids, for example. A lot of fathers, I had a father one time, one of the marriage retreats we did, and he says, well, isn't my job as the dad to just give advice, like to tell everybody in my family what to do, my wife, my daughters? And I was really shocked by his sort of take on life, that like, this is his charge in life. I'm just supposed to be this rock and just dishing out, here you go, here's advice, this is how you need to fix this problem, this is how you need to fix this problem. No, man, your daughters need you to listen to them. They need you to just be there. Your wife just needs you to validate her when she's had a rough day, and not tell her, well, if you had done this, well, that wouldn't have happened. So just that fine-tuning that listening skill set is really important, especially if you don't have it naturally.
Thank you. So for our next question, it says we've addressed struggling with awkwardness and embarrassment, and all of these are important issues, but kind of shifting to the area of stigma. How would we relate stories in hadith or of Sahaba of people who are very ashamed or in extremely shameful circumstances were able to slow down, digest mentally their emotional turmoil, and how the Prophet ﷺ validated their stress or walked them through it, that prophetic example of dealing with stigmas or shame?
So I'll take this. If I understand the question correctly, how did the Prophet ﷺ, in essence, provide an open environment, a safe environment where people could come to him, if we're talking about him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to freely share and open up and such, and how do we replicate that in our lives? I think that's what's being asked in essence, right? The Prophet was such a beautiful example of that, and there's so many scenarios where we see that. So there's, for example, the young man who comes to the Prophet ﷺ and he says, "Idhni ya Rasulullah bizina." He says, O Messenger of God, give me permission to commit zina, to fornicate, to engage in some sexually inappropriate act. And all of the other companions, they're saying, "Ma, like, be quiet. What are you saying? How dare you?" And the Prophet ﷺ just very, gently says, "Bring him close." He didn't make him feel shame for asking the question. He didn't shut him down. In fact, he pulled him towards himself. And he allowed himself to express himself. He allowed him to share about what's going on with him, even though the young man knows that what he's proposing is not good, but he's going to a source to get help. And so I think that's the exact point, right? That this young man, he knew what he was asking is not right, but he felt comfortable enough to bring this to the Prophet ﷺ. And so he didn't do anything yet. And he's trying to navigate, well, I have these feelings, I have these urges, I have these desires. I don't know what to do. Tell me what to do, right? That's in essence what he's saying. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he says, and he doesn't shame him and doesn't even quote Quran on him. He doesn't, the word spiritual bypass, I think it's careful how we kind of maybe just freely throw that word around sometimes, but he didn't, in this case, spiritually bypass him and just start, quoting Quran and quoting things and saying, "Don't you know Allah says, wala taqrabu zina, you shouldn't go close to zina." He didn't take that approach with him because he knows the boy knows, but rather he used a different sort of reasoning tactic with him. "Atuhibbuhu li ummik?" Do you wish that for your mother? Would you want that for your mother? Would you want that for your sister? And the young man, he says, "No way, ya Rasulullah," right? So creating that open atmosphere, allowing people that we are close with to feel safe with the conversations that they can have with us, and for us not to instantly jump on and blame and put down. And there's another example of when there is a man who was an alcoholic, and he drank once and he was punished. He drank again, and one time he was being punished. This was a sort of reformative punishment to help him refrain from his drinking. And while this man is taking this punishment, one of the companions that's there, he says, "La'natullah alayk," he says, "May Allah curse you." And the Prophet ﷺ, he tells him, in essence, he tells this other man, "How dare you say that? This man, he loves Allah and his messenger." He says, "Don't help shaitan against your, la tu'ina shaitana ala akhik." Don't help shaitan over your brother. Like, support him. He has admitted that he has done wrong. He admits that he's struggling. He's going through a rough time. Don't kick a man while he's down, right? But rather be there to support him in that moment of struggle. So that, I think that, is really important, again, especially for parents, not to just, when your kids open up to you, that is such a blessing. When your kids open up to you, so something wrong that they've done, it's such a blessing. A lot of times we blow it and we start criticizing, "Didn't I tell you so? I told you never to go there. I told you not to deal with that person." They're coming to you because they feel bad, and they need you to say that no, I'm sorry that you went through that, and I'm sorry that you had to experience that, and I'm glad you came to me, right? Rather than, because if you shut them down, they're not going to come to you again. So keeping that openness and that that sort of safe space is so important.
Jazakallah khair. For the sake of time, we will move on to the next question, inshallah. I'm going to combine two of them. I hope it doesn't reduce one or the other. But one of the questions is about somebody's father, or elderly father, recently moving here after war has broken out in their country. He's facing stress and depression, and has critical medication that he has to take. But due to the stress and depression, he no longer wants to take the medication, and seeing a therapist is out of the question for him. So the question is, what are ways to either support him through this, support him in trying, should they be supporting him in trying to take his medication, and how to move forward that, if there is any advice on this question, inshallah.
Yeah, I can start on this one. One of the beautiful things about our community is kind of the village perspective on how we support each other. And one of the things I learned, I'm a convert, alhamdulillah, to Islam. And so coming into the Muslim community, and then being a therapist in the Muslim community, I've seen how it could create challenges with the mesh families, kind of like stepping on each other's toes a lot. But then also in events of crisis like this, where the family could become really supportive. And so one of the things that you can consider doing in this scenario is one of two things. Does he have an older brother or sister that's alive that can possibly influence him? And or just a group of peers, meaning in the family, his siblings, that can get together and express concern? And or does he have respect for the local imam of the masjid, that maybe you can set up a meeting with them to at least start there, so that you don't have to feel alone through this? And then the last effort would be his kids, all of his kids getting together and saying, not necessarily that they have to get, that he has to get mental health treatment if that's going to cause a fight, but at least talk about the medication, and take the loving approach that Baba, we're concerned about you. Abu, we're concerned about you. We want you to be here for many years for your grandchildren. Can you consider taking this medication? This is what doctors are saying. And then this is where we also, mashallah, I'm having this experience with my mother-in-law. It comes back to us having to actually give them the medicine every day. Not necessarily because of refusal. Sometimes they just forget. And so just like you would, and this is what's so beautiful about Islam, is the responsibility towards your parents. This is why it's so emphasized, because the fact that, it's all the full circle, because it's like having my 5-year-old, 6-year-old back in the house again. I have to remind them, go brush your teeth. You forgot to brush your teeth. And that's not what I have to remind her, but it's other things, right? And so, so part of it is taking advantage of the cultural models that we have. We want to sometimes throw those out the window sometimes because they can be frustrating, but there are very strong benefits to it. And I found the one, and especially in the Desi community, in the Indo-Pak community, with the older brother can really be a powerful one, or older sibling that can influence the younger sibling, because the reverence is so strong. So I don't know that person's scenario, but I think you said the war-torn area, so it probably wasn't Desi community. But either way, trying to find a sibling that can have influence and or other family members.
Jazakallah khair for that response. I do have a couple of more questions, and inshallah we can get through all of them. I think this one is quite timely considering next week is Eid, inshallah. So the question is, it starts with a statement saying that this person always goes into severe depression during, like, around the time of Eid. Their family doesn't do anything. They feel as if they've tried everything they could, but going to Eid events alone, not knowing anyone, is a struggle. So if there's any advice around this.
I'll share one piece of advice, and I imagine Brother Edmund would have something to add. And I think, so one thing that comes to mind is, it can be very it can be very lonely, coming into a Muslim community and not knowing anyone, maybe as a convert, maybe as somebody with a renewed commitment to Islam. Maybe you had a Muslim family, but they never practiced, whatever it was. And it can be very difficult navigating these happy times, Eid in particular, and Christians have the same challenge during Christmas, and if they don't have family and such. But for us as Muslims, one thing I think that a person should consider doing is becoming their own advocate and taking some forward steps of their own. And what I mean by that is, Eid is one point in time, but your life in the community is there year round. And so if you develop strong ties in the community, if you become an active participant in the community, you're connected to whatever committee or group or function of the local masjid or the local Muslim community, and you involve yourself, you go and you volunteer, you'll make friends, you'll be connected. And it's not easy, it's not difficult to get connected to the Muslim community. There's so many opportunities. If you're a good cook some good food and you're in. If you're a good something, you have a good skill set, go and contribute and you're in. It's not as difficult as sometimes we make it. And so that way, when Eid comes around, you're there, you're part of the community. And if you're not, and if and you may even have to take one other step and tell one of your friends, say, look, Eid comes around and you all have your family gatherings, you have your extended family, you get together and you do this stuff. But I don't have anybody. Can I come hang out with you guys on Eid? And I'm serious. It's just a simple ask. And if you're already connected, a lot of people just don't realize, they don't know, right? They don't know that the person sitting next to them doesn't have the support system and the structure that I've taken for granted my whole life because I come from a Muslim family and we have our deep roots and whatever. But it takes some work, right, on your end to be connected, and then if it needs that extra layer of asking straight up, no big deal. And Muslims will, once you're in, and then you're khalas, you're in for life, right?
Shaykh Suhail. Anything to add to that, Brother Edmund, before we wrap up?
I would just agree. Being a convert myself, I've had some of those experiences early on in my life, and I know what that feels like. One point where I had no idea how packed the masjid got during Eid prayer, this one masjid I was going to go to. And so I didn't even make the Eid prayer because I caught like the last 10 seconds of it because I got caught in traffic. And then I was praying, and then people started leaving the masjid, and I got trampled after the Eid prayer. So not hurt or anything, but people were kicking me and stuff while I was trying to finish my prayer. So I understand that experience, and that's exactly it. And actually, that's one of the things I did was I started volunteering in the community and made some friends. I would get invited to people's houses during Ramadan and that kind of thing. And I've also worked with clients who have gotten divorced, and maybe they moved here to marry their spouse, and so now they don't have any family here. And then Ramadan comes, Eid comes, and they struggle. So that's one of the things that they do is they'll start volunteering in the masjid or just getting involved in the community in some way, and just finding their people, basically. So yeah, I would agree.
Thank you. So we are at about time. I do have one more question that I would like to just ask, if that's okay, inshallah. So I know earlier we were discussing about, or Brother Edmund, you were saying that now a lot of us talk about, removing ourselves from situations where we're not comfortable, removing ourselves from the harm that is happening, things to that extent. So a question I have is that if somebody knows that their parent has abused sexually or otherwise someone in the past, they've gone through this experience, like what is is there a right to cut them off, or how do we engage that situation, particularly from the Islamic perspective of cutting that person off or that parent off? And maybe we can start with you, Shaykh Suhail.
Okay, Bismillah. So we deal with this a lot in the community, and Islam says, or Allah says, وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا, that I should show ihsan to my parents. Well, ihsan needs to be contextualized based on what you as an individual are going through. And so if I have a parent, and I'm not speaking to this exact scenario, but I'm giving you the general principle. If I have a parent that, and we've had many cases of this, somebody who has narcissistic personality disorder. Not only is a narcissist, but he's a true narcissist in the full sense of the word. And then nothing I ever do is good enough. It's always about him. I'm hurt in every single interaction that I have with them, et cetera, et cetera. Well, what do I do? And they're getting old and they have needs. And what am I supposed to do? How do I, if by you engaging them, you are giving them space to hurt you, and in essence, they are piling up their evil deeds, their sayyi'at, because you're carrying on your relationship with them, and in turn they're abusing you, they're doing things that are hurtful and so forth, then in essence you're not doing ihsan. You follow what I'm saying? You are supposed to treat them well, and you're supposed to make sure that that you are also a doorway for them to be in good standing with Allah. But if you're giving them space in your life by which to abuse you, then they're not doing right by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so you're not doing ihsan with them. And so, you take that principle and you apply it to your situation. If there's, and I tell clients this all the time, or people at different stages of life. In Islam, we're not allowed to cut off relations. That's a red line that we're not allowed to do. So if the relationship between myself and my brother Edmund, for example, I should have my door wide open because I trust him. He's a beautiful brother, and I love him for the sake of Allah. And we want to have, a relationship where it's just open between the two of us. But when I have a relationship with someone who's bringing harm at me, I need to close the door a little bit. It's still open, but I open it, it's still open, but they need to knock, right? To fully come in, for me to open up the door. It's not wide open for them to just come in and ram, down my throat things that are harmful to me. You know what I mean? And then if you have somebody who's very hurtful and abusive towards you, the door is still open. It's just barely cracked. But you didn't cut you don't say that I will never talk to them again. Maybe you don't have to talk to them, but for one time a year, right? And so that's how you balance out that directive, Islamic directive of not cutting off family ties, but at the same time applying ihsan in a way that is appropriate and not harmful or hurtful to yourself.
Yeah, I think when I mentioned that earlier, I would agree 100% with Shaykh Suhail and what he said. I mean, the challenge, there's a difference between somebody who you argue with because you don't get along that well, and somebody who actually has caused physical or sexual harm to you or somebody you know. And then that's just enabling them if you put them in that situation again. And so you don't want to be somebody that's how I think what Shaykh Suhail was saying, when you almost allow them to do their sin then. So definitely in those cases, first, when it's in Islamic law, first remove harm is one of the main maxims. Like if this person causes harm and established to cause harm to people, it's different if somebody's just a little selfish every now and then, and they don't, aren't that friendly with you when you go to their house and that kind of thing. But when they've actually committed abuse to people, that's a different scenario, and we need to protect ourselves from them and our loved ones from them as well.
And I didn't see the question, by the way. I just read now the question, and I apologize. I framed it in sort of general framework, but you're talking about actual sexual abuse. Do you, and so I would say the same thing that I said before, but that door is, it's closed to the absolute maximum because you need to protect yourself. And that person needs absolute permission from you to be able to step into your world.
Jazakallah khair. So we're going to go ahead and close it off there. I'm going to ask Shaykh Suhail to close us off on a dua, inshallah. And then I am asking folks to stick around. We do have a feedback form, inshallah. We're always trying to improve these learning circles and healing circles so everyone can benefit to the maximum, inshallah. I want to thank again Brother Edmund and Shaykh Suhail for sharing your knowledge with us. It has been such an informative session. I myself have taken so much out of it. So Jazakallah khair. May Allah reward you for your efforts and your time spent with us today, inshallah.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. اللهم اجعلنا من الذين يستمعون القول فيتبعون أحسنه. Ask Allah to make us from those who hear the words that were said today and to take what is best from it. We ask Allah to bring healing to the hearts of those that are dealing with all sorts of life struggles. We ask Allah to to bring happiness to the sad hearts, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give stability to those hearts that are wavering and that are anxious, and we ask Allah to mend the wounds that are there between us in our relationships, and we ask Allah to strengthen the bonds of friendship and love and brotherhood and sisterhood between us, and we ask Allah to bring our hearts together always for His love, always for His sake. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.
So much. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, inshallah. Okay, inshallah, everybody has had a chance to scan the QR code. I've also sent the link in the chat, alhamdulillah. To close us off, I just want to go ahead and share some resources. Like we mentioned in the video, our clinic is open, alhamdulillah, to support California residents. If you are interested in booking an appointment, the link is here on our website. We also have some more resources where you're able to access the 988 hotline, like Brother Edmund was discussing, and other available resources as well, inshallah, for California, as well as folks outside of California. All right, and with that, I will close this off, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan again, Shaykh Suhail and Brother Edmund, for your time and your knowledge and your wisdom today. We can't thank you enough. With that, assalamu alaikum.